everyone, I'm Jason, and this is your commentary on Exodus chapter 34. The Lord said to Moses, "Cut out 2 stone tablets that are just like the first ones. I will write on them the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be ready in the morning, then come up on Mount Sinai. Meet with me there on top of the mountain. No one must come with you. No one must be seen anywhere on the mountain. Not even the flocks and herds must be allowed to eat grass in front of the mountain." So Moses carved out 2 stone tablets that were just like the first ones. Early in the morning, he went up Mount Sinai. He carried the 2 tablets in his hands. He did as the Lord had commanded him to do. Then the Lord came down in the cloud. He stood there with Moses and announced his name, the Lord. Now, we've seen this cloud before. It's the one that led the Israelites out of Egypt. We'll see it a couple of other times in the Old Testament, and even one more time in the New Testament on the Mount of Transfiguration. This cloud represents the Holy Spirit of God that descends upon his people. As he passed in front of Moses, he called out. He said, "I am the Lord, the Lord. I am a God who is tender and kind. I am gracious. I am slow to get angry. I am faithful and full of love. I continue to show my love to thousands of people. I forgive those who do evil. I forgive those who refuse to obey. And I forgive those who sin." Now here he says 3 types of forgiveness. The first is, I forgive those who do evil. The word here for evil is also interpreted as iniquities. It means someone who twists or distorts what's true. Secondly, he says, I forgive those who refuse to obey. So there are those who twist the word of God, who intentionally or accidentally just don't understand what God was trying to say. But then there are those people who deliberately tell God no. They just stand against him and don't want to obey him. Now, most of us can look at those type of people and say, oh, they're evil people. I'm not like them. I'm a good person because I'm not directly telling God no, and I'm not distorting his word. However, the third one he says here is, and I forgive those who sin. Now, this word isn't like the first 2. This word just means that they've fallen short, that they haven't met the goal that they're supposed to reach. Anyone who says, oh, I'm only human, and they mean I'm not perfect, automatically acknowledges that there's a standard that they know they're supposed to live up to, and they don't. God definitely forgives those who are angry, who are stubborn. He forgives those who twist his word and make it mean other things. But he also forgives those of us who are good people, but just not perfect. We're not deserving of God's grace. We've fallen short. We also need God's forgiveness. But I do not let guilty people go without punishing them. I punish the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren for the sin of their parents. Moses bowed down to the ground at once and worshipped. "Lord," he said, "if you are pleased with me, then go with us. Even though these people are stubborn, forgive the evil things we have done. Forgive our sin and accept us as your people." Then the Lord said, I am making a covenant with you. I will do wonderful things in front of all your people. I will do miracles that have never been done before in any nation in the whole world. The people you live among will see the things that I, the Lord, will do for you, and they will see how wonderful those things really are. Obey what I command you today. I will drive out the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites to make room for you. Be careful. Do not make a peace treaty with those who live in the land where you are going. They will be a trap to you. Tear down their altars. Smash their sacred stones. Cut down the poles they used to worship, the goddess Asherah. Do not worship any other god. I am a jealous God. In fact, my name is jealous. This is not to be confused with the sin of jealousy. When we have jealousy, it's typically that we're coveting something that doesn't actually belong to us. Here, everything belongs to God. He is righteous when he's jealous because all he wants is what is rightfully his. That's a sharp contrast to our form of jealousy. He also says when you go into the land, don't make a treaty with these people. Cut down their poles, take down their statues. He's not saying that you can't bring those people into your group. They can become Israelites. They can worship the one true God if they want to. We have examples of that with Rahab, with Ruth, times when people from this land have joined with the Israelites in worshiping the one true God. What he's saying here is get rid of their gods. Get rid of their false religions that are going to pull you away from the one true God. Before you think that this is intolerant, you might want to consider what gods they worshipped and how they worshipped them. Just a couple of the gods that they had. One was Baal or Baal. And he was a god where you would have to cut yourself, inflict bodily harm in order to get his attention. This is seen later on when there's the worship on Mount Carmel. There's also the god called Malak, and he was an evil god. In order to worship him, you'd actually have to take a live baby and put him on the hands that were bronze, that were over a fire pit. This would kill the babies, it would burn them. And this is the way that you're supposed to offer sacrifices to this god. They also worshipped the goddess Asherah, which was a fertility goddess. In order to do this, they had a pole located in the center, and they would have drunken orgies. Nothing was held back. Nothing was truly sacred. It was just all out there. And so these are the gods that the one true God is saying, get rid of them. Get rid of their statues, of their idols. Don't let that be part of who you will be when you move into the new land. Be careful not to make a peace treaty with those who live in the land. They commit sin by offering sacrifices to their gods. They will invite you to eat their sacrifices. They will choose some of their daughters as wives for your sons. And those daughters will commit sin by worshiping their gods. Then they will lead your sons to do the same thing. Do not make statues of gods. Celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread. For 7 days eat bread that is made without yeast, just as I commanded you. Do it at the appointed time in the month of Abib. You came out of Egypt in that month. It was the Feast of Unleavened Bread because they didn't use yeast. Yeast was a symbol of sin, and so it was a way to show that you're supposed to be cutting that out of your lives. Every male animal that is born first to its mother belongs to me. That includes your livestock. It includes herds and flocks alike. Sacrifice a lamb to buy back every male donkey that is born first to its mother. But if you do not buy the donkey back, break its neck. Buy back every oldest son. You must not come to worship me with your hands empty. Do your work in 6 days, but you must rest on the 7th day. Even when you are plowing your land or gathering your crops, you must rest on the 7th day. Celebrate the Feast of Weeks. Bring the first share of your wheat crop. The Feast of Weeks was actually 7 weeks long, so it was 49 days. The 49 days plus 1 is where we get in the New Testament the Pentecost. It was a way of showing that everything that God gives you, the first of the fruits, the best of the best, is supposed to go back to God. Celebrate the Feast of Booths. Hold it in the fall. 3 times a year, all of your men must come to worship me. I am your Lord and King, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations ahead of you. I will increase your territory. Go up 3 times a year to worship me. While you are doing that, I will keep others from wanting to take any of your land for themselves. I am the Lord your God. The Feast of Booths was done by going outside of your house into a tent. So they actually had a booth or a tent where they would have their meals in, as a way to remember that God delivered them up out of Egypt. So the time that they spent in the desert, it was a reminder that God was delivering them into the promised land. Some people nowadays, the true Orthodox, not only do they eat food in their booth or their tent, they'll even go so far as sleep in there during the Feast of Booths. All 3 of these feasts are signs that we trust God. Because in order for us to give that much back to God, to rest on the Sabbath day, to leave our territory unprotected, we had to trust that by us worshiping God, He would provide for us. That is why it says, while you are doing that, I will keep others from wanting to take any of your land for themselves. He doesn't just say that He will prevent them from taking the land. God is such a powerful God that He can even make them not want to take the land. Do not include anything that is made with yeast when you offer me the blood of a sacrifice. You must not keep any of the meat from the sacrifice at the Passover feast until morning. Bring the best of the first share of your crops to my house. I am the Lord your God. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Then the Lord said to Moses, write down the words I have spoken. I have made a covenant with you and with Israel in keeping with those words. Moses was there with the Lord for 40 days and 40 nights. He didn't eat any food or drink any water. The Lord wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant. Those words are the 10 Commandments. Now, Moses is up there for 40 days and 40 nights without any food or water. This isn't the first time. He's already done this once before, the first time that he received the 10 Commandments from God. Now, it's a spiritual exercise. It's not something that can be done without God providing for you. Not only does Moses do it here, but we also see that this is exactly what Jesus does in the New Testament as well. Before he starts his ministry, he spends 40 days and 40 nights in the desert in community with God. Moses came down from Mount Sinai. He had the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hands. His face was shining because he had spoken with the Lord, but he didn't realize it. Aaron and all the people of Israel saw Moses. His face was shining, so they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called out to them. So Aaron and all the leaders of the community came to him, and Moses spoke to them. After that, all of the people came near him, and he gave them all the commandments the Lord had given him on Mount Sinai. Moses finished speaking to them. Then he put a veil over his face. But when he would go to speak with the Lord, he would remove the veil. He would keep it off until he came out. Then he would tell the people what the Lord had commanded. They would see that his face was shining, so Moses would put the veil back over his face. He would keep it on until he went in again to speak with the Lord. Moses' face was shining because he was in the presence of God. The natural radiance of God manifested itself onto Moses. He wasn't aware that his face was shining, though. Sometimes we may not realize how close we are walking with God. We know that we have a relationship with Him, but it's not until someone else points out that they see God in our lives that we truly see it for ourselves. There's a second component of the veil here as well. This is still the Old Testament. It was the giving of the law. And although the law does point us back to God, it wasn't complete yet. It wasn't perfect enough to stay radiant. Eventually, the shining on his face, the radiance, would go away. So it would have to be veiled. The Old Testament, although it reveals to us who the Messiah will be, it's still under a veil. Now, what a wonderful thing, because in the New Testament, that veil, that curtain that separates us from the true radiance of God that never goes away, was finally torn and removed. Well, that's it for commentary on Exodus 34. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.